Yo, what's going on, guys? My name is Alice and today we are going to be looking at the cubic archetype. I'm going to be including some duels here right now. And we're going to go ahead and get into the deck list that I've been running. It's been working a little bit. Hasn't been perfect. And as you can see, there's a lot of spells and traps in this. Not that very many monsters. So it can brick. It can brick a little bit. But anyway, we're going to get into it. So the cubic cards we have in here are Vjon the Cubic Seed, Dark Garnex the Cubic Beast, Blade Garudia the Cubic Beast, Duza the Meteor Cubic Vessel, Buster Gundil the Cubic Beast, Crimson Nova the Cubic Dark Lord. Those are all the main deck monsters, and we can go ahead and go through one of them at a time. Vjon can't be destroyed by battle, and at the end of the damage step, if this card battled an opponent's monster, you can place this face up in your spell and trap card zone, and if you do, place a cubic counter on that monster. What cubic counters do is that once you place it on the opponent's monster, that monster can no longer attack or activate its effects. And then during your main phase 1 or 2, you can special summon this from the spell and trap card zone to your monster zone and face up attack or defense, and just leave it there for something else to run into it. Next, we have the Dark Garnex, the Cubic Beast. All of the Cubic Beast cards have the same gimmick where it has to have a certain, where it sends a cubic monster you control, or cubic monsters you control, to the graveyard and gain attack based on how many you sent and what their effects are. This is just one, gains 1,000 attack, and when this card destroys a monster by battle, which probably will never happen, you can target up to 2 VJoms in your graveyard, send this card to the graveyard, and if you do, special summon them, then add 1 Garudia to your hand. This is the same thing, but for 2,000 attack, and it can make a second attack. And Buster Gundil does the same exact thing, send 3 cubic monsters you control to the graveyard, and then it gains 2,000 attack. It can make up to 3 attacks per battle phase. However, this time, if it gets destroyed by, or actually if it just gets sent to the graveyard by battle or card effect, you can target up to 3 cubic monsters in your graveyard, special summon them from your hand or from the graveyard, and then add 1 cubic card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. So it's a pretty good recycler. However, you usually don't go into this because you usually don't have 3 monsters out. Next, I'm running 1 Summoner Monk, so I can ditch a spell card and then get a Duza. What Duza does is, when it's normal and special summoned, you can send 1 cubic card from your deck to your graveyard, and if a monster is sent to your graveyard that turn, you can make this monster gain 200 attack for each monster that is face up on, or each monster with a different name in your graveyard. Usually it's only about 200 or 400, so at most you usually get this up to like 2,000 on a regular basis. Next, I am running 3 Crimson Nova, the Dark Cubic Lord. And what Crimson Nova does is you can special summon this card from your hand by revealing 3 other cubic monsters in your hand with different names. It doesn't even have to be other. If you have 2 Crimson Novas along with 2 other cubic cards with different names, you can also reveal 1 Crimson Nova. It's just not an effect, so your opponent can't negate it while it's happening. And once it's special summoned to the field, it's unaffected by other monsters' activated effects whose original attack is 3,000 or less. Really good in the current meta, where Mirror Jade likes to just banish things. Can't be banished, however, Mirror Jade's graveyard effect still works, so I'm pretty sure it's just a lingering effect once it's activated. Which Crimson Nova is not unaffected by those, unfortunately. Next, I am running 1 Eldlik the Golden Lord. Now, in my previous deck builds, I say I do not want to run meta cards. This is a very different situation, and the reason for that is so the cubic spells and traps like to go to the graveyard because they all have graveyard effects, which is why Duza is such an important card in this deck. And the 2 most important, which is Karma and Dharma, are continuous spells and traps. So if you have Eldlik in the graveyard, you can just send 1 of these to the graveyard, get a 3,500 beat stick out, and then, depending on which one you sent, gain effects once those cards are banished. Next, I'm running 1 Harpy's Feather Duster. You want to get rid of the back row because this has no spell trap card negation, unfortunately. I am running 1 monster gate. You contribute 1 monster, and then excavate the top of the top cards of your deck until you get a monster that can be normal or special summoned. That's technically only 4 of these cards, which is VJom, Summoner Monk, Duza, and Eldlick. Having 4 in this deck is not ideal, but if you don't pull any of those or you get Duza, honestly, if you get Eldlick as well, you would want to get Duza in this situation. You can send a cubic card or cubic spell and trap card to your graveyard. So for that, it's not that bad. You can always just, you know, if you send one, if you get Duza, you can send a cubic card. If you get Eldlick, it's just a 2800 defense wall at the very least. So after that, it's cubic wave. Target 1 face-up cubic monster you control and 1 face-up monster your opponent controls. Double your monster's attack and half the opponent's monster's attack. Then you can banish this card from the graveyard on any number of cubic monsters from your graveyard. Then target face-up monsters to control your opponent controls equal to the number of banished cubic monsters, and place 1 cubic counter on each. So you can pretty much make your entire opponent's board paperweight. And unfortunately, it does say target, so monsters that can't be targeted are not affected by this. However, if you have VJom, you can attack into those and then place 1 on there. Now that sounds like suicide, but there is a card in this deck that allows you to negate the damage as well. After that, we have a Foolish Burial Goods, so that I can send a Karma to the graveyard. And once Karma goes to the graveyard, you can banish it and then get a cubic monster to your hand, which is usually going to be Crimson Nova. Next, I am running a Pot of Extravagance. You don't really care about the extra deck all that much. In fact, I'll only be going over 3 extra deck monsters. Well, no, I'll be going over 4, because 1 has a very specific use. But, yeah, you don't really care about the extra deck. Actually, I need to add 2 more. So, having Extravagance isn't all that bad. Alright, and the next Cubic Karma. So, I already went over the banished effect of Cubic Karma. However, it has an activated effect. Is when this card is activated, you can target 1 cubic monster you control. Send any number of VJoms from your hand or deck, or deck to the graveyard. And that monster gains 800 attack for each VJom sent. So you can make your 3000 attack Dark Cubic Lord go up to 5400. Next, we have Cubic Dharma. And what this effect is, you take no battle damage involving your cubic cards. So this is why you can attack into stuff with VJom. Also, you can send 1 cubic card from your hand if you do draw 1 card. So it's just this can get you pure advantage depending on what you send. If you send a Karma, you can add a cubic monster after drawing a card, which is pretty good. Fortunately, it doesn't work all that well with Pot of Extravagance, so you don't want to get that and Pot of Extravagance in the same hand. Then you can banish this card from your graveyard if it's sent. Then target 1 cubic monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand. Just a recycler for Crimson Nova if you need it, or for Duza. Running 1 Call by the Grave. You can run 2 if you want. I just don't have it. And if the reason why this is so important, because if you get Ash Blossom, if you haven't noticed, this has a lot to do with the deck. If you get Ash Blossomed, it can be a pretty hard stop to stuff. Next, I am running 1 Forbidden Droplet. And the reason for this is that you can send a Cubic Karma to the graveyard on Forbidden Droplet, negate an opponent's effect, and half their attack. So again, pure advantage just by having this one card. Depending on if they can negate it with the monster effect. If they can, you can just send a monster instead. Next, I'm running 2 Adhesion Trap Holes. I don't think anyone else is running this in their cubic deck, along with like Summoner Monk and Eldlick. Specifically Adhesion Trap Hole. The reason why this is so important because it has the monster's original attack. So if they get out like Guardian Chimera, you can make Crimson Nova just completely unaffected by its effects. Again, I'm not sure if I went over this, but it's unaffected by monsters' effects who activated effects whose original attack is 2000 or less. So this can like negate any monsters that your opponent might have that's over 3000 attack, which doesn't happen all that often, but when it does, it can be pretty devastating. Next, I'm running 1 Cubic Rebirth, and all this does is when your opponent declares a direct attack, you can target the attacking monster, special summon monsters from your opponent's hand, deck, or graveyard with the same number or with the same name. Also, the attack of the targeted monster and those special summon monsters become 0. You can place 1 cubic counter on each. This is obviously not that good. You can give them link material, but it does make it so that you do survive at least 1 turn. So it's not that bad. However, if you give them the link material, it's not that good either. Next, you have Unification of the Cubic Dark Lords. This is this archetype's fusion card, which you will usually never use for its main use. Its secondary use is pretty good though. You can banish this card from the graveyard, special summon 1 level 4 or lower cubic monster from your hand or deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. And if you do, it can't be destroyed by battle or card effects that turn. You can only activate that if a face-up cubic monster you control is destroyed by battle or leaves the field. You can banish this card, and then gain that effect. So it's not that bad. You can easily get out another Duza, activate its effect, and then send a Cubic Karma if you need to. But that's the effect you're going to be using with this card usually. The fusion card isn't all that worth it. I'll go over what it is when I go over the extra deck. It's just not that good. Next, I'm running 3 Cubic Ascension, and what this does is when your opponent monster declares an attack, doesn't even have to be a direct attack, you can special summon 1 V-Jom from your deck, and if you do, change the attack target to it and perform damage calculation. Again, this is within the damage calculation, so your opponent can't activate or use monster effects in that step. That way, if you do get this off and you special summon a V-Jom, they can't get rid of your V-Jom before the attack goes through, so you guarantee have a cubic counter on that card. And the last main deck card we have is Cubic Causality. I'm only running this at 1. You can run it at 2 or 3 if you want. What this does is you can distribute a number of cubic counters on face-up monsters your opponent controls up to the number of cubic monsters you control. And then once this goes to the graveyard, you can banish this card from your graveyard, then target 1 cubic monster you control. This turn, each time it battles, or each time it destroys a monster by battle, and it has to have the cubic counter on it, you can inflict damage to your opponent equal to the original attack of the destroyed monster. One thing to note is, and this is only a Master Duel, it's really annoying because it keeps on wanting to go off at every second, even if you have it toggle to auto, because you can always use it. It will just keep on asking you. I actually got so annoyed one time that I just turned it to off, and then it caused me to lose the duel because I couldn't react to something. And yeah, it was really funny, but really annoying at the same time. Now going on to the extra deck, you have Crimson Nova Trinity, and as it sounds, you need all 3 Crimson Nova in your hand or field to special summon this or fusion summon it with the fusion card. Its effect is it can't be targeted or destroyed by your opponent's card effects, and when this card declares an attack, half your opponent's life points. When this card destroys an opponent's monster by battle, you can make a second attack that turn. That is an activated effect, so it can be interacted with. And if you take effect damage, you also inflict the same amount of effect damage on your opponent. It's honestly not that bad. It has some form of spell and trap card immunity, along with not being able to be targeted by monsters' effects. However, so many things in this format don't, or so many things in this deck, or YuGiOh nowadays, don't target, don't destroy, they can banish or send. So that doesn't actually doesn't help all that much. As for the once it's destroyed, you can make a second attack. The Crimson Nova does the same thing. It doesn't have the opponent's life points, unfortunately. However, during the end phase, each player takes 2,000 damage. I didn't go over that bit. The 3,000 damage can screw you over, actually. So it's probably my bad for not going over it earlier. If you go first, you can... That's bad. If you go first and you take 3,000 damage, that's bad. That's obviously very, very bad. But other than that, this card is pretty good. Anyway, we can go over the next extra deck monster that you really care about, which is a Symbol Nightingale. You get 2 V-Joms on the field. You can make it attack directly and then go into Zeus. And then Zeus, if you don't know, can send 2 materials from itself to the graveyard and send all of the cards on the field to the graveyard, which at that point will most likely be just all you'll have is Zeus, probably. Or if you have a spell and trap card, again, they want to be in the graveyard as well, so that doesn't really matter all that much. Last one we have is Utopic Dark Infinity. The only reason you have this is if you happen to have 2 Crimson Novas on the field at the same time and you don't want to take 3,000 damage, you can just special summon this. That is the only reason it's there, so it can negate the 3,000 damage. Unfortunately, this Utopic Dark Infinity doesn't have any negation or any protection, so once this gets special summoned onto the field, it's gone next turn. Usually by like spell card, trap card, monster. This is gone next turn, so you'll never get to attack with it. The only reason why you want it again is to just get your just so you don't take 3,000 points of damage. So yeah, that's the deck list. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. This deck can obviously brick a lot of cards that can't be normal or special summoned, or if you don't have a way to send Cumic Karma to the graveyard, you can brick on that as well. But it's been working pretty good. As I said, I included gameplay or deck duels at the first of this video, so you should have seen those. Yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Hope to see you on the next one. Peace.